Hello my friends, Thunderbob here, and tonight we're going to be taking a deeper look at the Dead Space remake. I've now beaten the game and I've started my second playthrough and I've got some thoughts. To start with, Dead Space has always been a favorite series of mine. I love the original trilogy, I even own Dead Space Extraction for the Wii, that light gun game. I really loved the first game at the time of release, but felt that the second really improved on it in a lot of ways. The third game was a bit of a disappointment, veering too much away from horror and into the generic action game. Unlike the previous games, which balanced the horror and the action, I thought much better. Luckily, this remake helps to bridge the gap and really improve on that original experience. It's hard to articulate how impressed I am with this game. There's only a few remakes that have been released over the years that I think really take the original game and not only meet it, but exceed it. Games like the GameCube Resident Evil remake, the more recent Resident Evil 2 remake, and even Diablo 2 Resurrected, a few of my favorite. This remake belongs among those, as it takes everything that was great about that original and amplifies those elements, while taking the few stumbling points and making subtle corrections that really improve the experience. The biggest changes are in the structure of the game. In the original, you generally had to take a tram to each of the sections of the ship, which discreetly hid the loading of those areas. Now, new quarters have been added to the game that connect the various areas of the Ishimaru. It makes the setting feel much more cohesive, seamless, and less disconnected. It also has the ability to add additional side quests and give you more reason to explore that were not present in the original, adding almost a Metroidvania level of exploration to the game. The second big change is the addition of voice acting for the player character. While the later games on the series voiced Isaac, the original game followed the example of games like Half-Life. In these games, they want you to feel like you're actually inhibiting the character, and leave them mute to allow you to fill in the responses in your head. This works in some games, but I believe this horror game benefits greatly from the limited dialogue that's been added. You're not some wisecracking action hero, but your character responds to the other characters and situations around them in a realistic manner, which I think adds to the experience.
The hell is that?
There have also been smart changes to many of the weapons in the game, changing up the secondary modes and balancing the damage. Many of the guns that I felt were useless in the original game are now my favorite. The structure of the game has also seen some changes, some characters expanded, and subtle changes to the ship, but overall I think these changes are improvements over the original game. My final loadout that I used for most of the end part of the game was the plasma cutter, the flamethrower, the ripper, and the line gun. I got all of these upgraded almost completely with all of their special abilities, and really enjoyed using this combination of weapons. The line gun is great at blowing off limbs. The plasma cutter almost becomes like a sniper rifle, hitting enemies from far away. The flamethrower is great for taking in large groups of enemies and also for killing the smaller enemies that really grab onto you and are quite annoying. And finally, the Ripper, I think, is the best gun in the game. When you upgrade this baby, it locks down enemies like no other weapon. It does crazy damage, and a single Ripper blade can kill 3, 4, 5 enemies if they're all together before it actually stops working. So it's just a great gun. Probably my favorite gun in the game, which I didn't use at all in the original. Obviously, the biggest change here is the graphics. Back in 2008, this was one of the best looking games, with a really defined look, and I feel like they've really kept that same aesthetic, but brought it into the modern era. The Ishimaru feels like a real ship that's slowly being consumed by these necromorphs. The contagion is literally growing on and through the ship with bodies hanging off on it. You go through the mining area with these huge turbines and machines. There's the creepy medical wing with the dead patients still strapped to the gurneys. And my favorite location is actually the crew quarters, as it feels like the most real and lived-in location. They've managed to do some really impressive things with the light and shadow in the game, and the necromorphs also look really terrifying, and the player models and other characters you meet along the way are believable and well acted. Overall, the graphics are simply amazing, while also maintaining a really good level of performance and playability on the PC and even on the lower spec Steam Deck, though there are some issues I've run into. There's some stuttering, that seems very random. It's not enough to really make it unplayable, but it's unpredictable. And then sometimes I think there may be a memory leak, and suddenly the game will be performing very, very poorly, with no real reason why. For example, the very last boss of the game, I got to him and my performance kept getting worse and worse. I got down to 7 FPS at one point. I died, and then what I did is I just saved, shut the game down, rebooted it, and then I was getting 90 FPS in that fight. I really don't understand what causes this, as most of the time I'm getting close to 100 FPS. Another area that I'm really impressed with is the sound design. Whoever does these Foley effects is just a genius. From the squish as you push through corridors enveloped in alien growth, the persistent droning of the ship, it all sounds so crisp and clear. And the areas where you can hear distant moans and cries for help are so creepy. I've literally pulled my noise-canceling headphones off thinking there was someone in the room with me. The gameplay is also incredible. Everything feels so well thought out. All of the weapons are really useful and complement each other. They all have use cases. You get the ability, like in the original, to upgrade your weapons and suit, and it really feels meaningful and changes these weapons. Taking careful shots to blow off enemy limbs, burning them to a crisp, or simply mowing them down with the pulse rifle feels really satisfying. You can equip up to 4 weapons at a time, and generally only ammo for those weapons will drop, which smartly lets you pick the tools that you want to use. You also get telekinesis and the ability to slow time, which are both used in combat and to solve puzzles in fun ways. The puzzles are not overly complex, but they do feel satisfying. Frequently, zero-G is used to add large spatial elements to these puzzles, and the remake improves these sections by giving you boosters and free movement, while the original was much more limited. This era of remakes that are respectful of the original games, while adding in more modern touches, has certainly made me excited to see what's to come. While Dead Space 2 I think was nearly perfect, I think the flawed Dead Space 3 is a perfect candidate to be refined and fixed through another remake. So final thoughts. This is an amazing remake. It takes everything that worked in the original and improves those elements, while adding in a few new touches that help fix up the few weak points. The graphics and sound are incredible, and this is one of the most terrifying games I've ever played. There are smart improvements to the combat and the layout of the ship that really make this a fun experience. If I had to give any negative, it would probably be the price to value ratio, which is a bit low, as the game's only about 12 to 15 hours long, but those 12 hours have very little padding, and it's really an intense experience for the entire playthrough. If you're a fan of the original game, or survival horror in general, you should really check this out. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please do check out some of my other videos. I've got a lot of PC game coverage, VR coverage, and classic game coverage. If you like what I'm doing, please do like, subscribe, drop me a comment with your thoughts, and thank you one more time. Have a great night, everyone.